who's almost 3, and this is Franny, who's almost 13. And I'm introducing you to them today to talk about how important our dogs have been over the years in helping us farm and keep the place running. And they're so important that we were actually able to tell the dog officer that they don't have to be chained up. I mean, because they're supposed to be, your animals are supposed to be chained up or in the house or something. They've given us a special dispensation because part of what they do is run around and chase varmints away of one sort or another. I don't know that we could farm actually if we didn't have our dogs. They provide services for the vegetarians, who are folks like well, rats are omnivorous, I guess, but the mice and the voles and the groundhogs and even the porcupines and all the people who love to eat vegetables and fruits and things, they will come in and, keep their numbers down, along with the cats too. The cats are very important too, especially for the smaller animals. But they also help us with the carnivorous predators, who are more like the foxes and the weasels and the minks and those kind of things. And because we have a lot of animals on range, we have our chickens and our turkeys on range, and having a dog around will keep those guys at bay to the extent that we can really keep our number of fatalities down. So I don't know that a lot of people these days think about dogs as working animals. They think of them more as a pet, and they think that maybe they should live inside at night. And dogs, especially these kind of dogs that have long hair and long fur, they often have a second layer underneath, which is an insulation layer. I don't know that Franny has that so much, but some dogs do. And they really enjoy being outside and prefer to be outside if that's what they're used to doing. So I just can't say enough about dogs. I wanted to say too that, back in the day you could get a dog, a mutt, from somebody else, somebody who's raising just had their own. I grew up in Illinois on a farm, and we would, people would just have a litter and you'd get a dog, and that's how you would continue that whole process. And people would give them away for free. And these days, particularly in this state, I think, and maybe in other states too, but it's all been locked up by the shelters, and either the shelters or the breeders who are breeding really fancy breeded dogs. And they're either way you cut it, they're very expensive. And if you buy a dog at a shelter, you'll find that you have to, either they'll have spayed it or neutered it beforehand, or you have to get that in order to have that arrangement with them. So we're very excited that we have found a young woman from who used to work at the farm school up in Orange Atoll, who actually has her own set of puppies, and we're going to get ourselves a nice mutt, large breed dog from her in April to continue our legacy. We often have 2 or 3 dogs. Franny is 13 now, and she's needing to train up a new dog for her eventual retirement. And so we're going to keep that going. But I can't say enough about these guys. They would never, these particular dogs, and we train them that way to not hurt people. We're not scared about having them for our own personal safety, but just for helping the farm run and keep that balance between the varmints and the predators and such in check. An interesting thing has happened over the time since I grew up, and even since the 80s, and now in the 2020s, when it's very difficult to get yourself a nice cat or a nice dog. Now, I grew up on a farm, and cats and dogs were always an important part of our whole farm crew, as it were. The dogs chasing away any animals that might want to be eating our livestock or eating our vegetation, and the cats really working on the vermin, the mice and rats and such that would get into grain and even in the garden be out there, especially if you're mulching really heavily. And so it was just commonplace to have a fair number of cats and dogs around, and they were also part of the family.
So we were able to get Franny, who is now 13 years old, for free from some folks in Petersham. Came from a litter. But soon after that, we recognized that people just weren't giving away puppies anymore, and that animals were getting spayed and neutered, and it all fell into the hands of shelters. And also there's the shelter crowd, but there's also then the folks who breed, specific breeds, and then raise them and sell them for large quantities of money. And so all of a sudden it was the case that it didn't seem that these cats and dogs were something that the average person could just have by getting somebody from a litter from somewhere. So we've kind of inadvertently taken this into our own hands here at Many Hands Organic Farm. Eloise is the grandmother of all, and she's outside right now. These kids are getting ready to go, and they're spending a little less time with their moms all the time. But she was a very close with us cat because her mother had died when she was 17 days old, and we raised her on a dropper, and she still thinks she's a human being pretty much. And she, when she started having kittens, decided to have them in the house, and so just kind of walked in and had them in the closet. And since then, she's had some other children, and Scraps is one of the other mothers of these kids right here. They both had their kittens in the house, and those two particularly tend to have them at the same time. So they co-raise their families. So I guess what we're doing is kind of an alternative source for animals here. We feed these guys really good food. We feed them chewy, organic cat food, and I give them a little cod liver oil every day and some liver or other organ meat that I get from one of our animals or from a local farmer who raises organic animals. And they, in turn, are part of our police force, as it were, on the farm, really keeping tabs on the population of rodents that can really take over a farm.
We really appreciate the chickens and how they are part of this whole integrated system at Many Hands. I guess one of the things that we've stood for from the very, very start is that we need to raise animals and vegetables and fruit all together. And I think we can do a better job for the environment, for the diversity on the farm by having all these systems working together. So today we cleaned out, you can see all this chickweed on the ground, which is from our house in the back. We had planted spinach, but it didn't do very well. And we had a nice mat of chickweed and we brought it here to the chickens. And you can see them displaying behavior. I don't know if you've ever, how much you know about chickens, but they work harder every day than any person I've ever met, and most animals that I've ever met. Possibly not honeybees and hummingbirds and things like that. But they're just constantly busy, and digging through here you'll see that they're eating some of the tree, and they're also sharing their grubs and worms and everything that they can find. Which will then really help create really fantastic flavored eggs. We just really have some of the best eggs around, and it's not only because of the really high quality organic grain that we use, but also that their chickens are, even here on February 22nd, they're still eating green things, and as you can see, the whole whole farm is covered in snow. But when it's not, and they're in their free range period, which is about November 1 until about April 1, they live in this house. They come out every morning and get whatever kind of sunshine that they want and whatever they can find in the grounds, and are so delightfully lay eggs for us in the house. We have about 97 hens right now. I think yesterday I had 83 eggs. And so we have a constant supply of really high quality eggs that are really sought after from a lot of folks.